Nearly 15 years ago, Nissan introduced the first mass-produced, affordable, long-range electric vehicle to the world called the Leaf. Now, the original Leaf was kind of like an affordable hatchback that just happened to be electric. It offered around 80 miles of range and a starting price of just over $30,000. Now, for 2026, we are seeing an all-new third generation. As you can see, this is a comprehensive redesign. It's built off of the latest all-electric architecture that it shares with the Aria. It has an enlarged battery pack that offers over 300 miles of all-electric range. So today, we're actually out here in West Hollywood, California, because we're finally able to see the all-new Leaf in the sheet metal. So now that we're doing so, let's go ahead and take a detailed first look. Now, before we start talking about the all-new styling for this third-generation Leaf, I thought I'd pop the hood and remind you guys if this car had a frunk. Now, just like the Aria, in which it shares its all-electric architecture, sadly, as you can see, there is no front trunk, but this is where Nissan, again, has made some upgrades in the powertrain department. Now, sadly, you can only still get this vehicle with a single-motor front-wheel drive application. Nissan decided that if you want all-wheel drive, they're going to happily sell you an Aria. So basically, the company will offer two different power outputs. There's also two different battery sizes. So later availability, there'll be a smaller 53 kilowatt-hour battery pack with a 130 kilowatt electric motor. That's roughly around 174 horsepower. This model that we're showing you here, however, has the larger 75 kilowatt hour battery pack offering 160 kilowatts, which means around 214 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. That's about the same horsepower, but a little bit more torque versus the previous generation. All goes out through a one-speed reduction gear transmission. And the company says, again, up to 303 miles of all-electric range. However, this model that we're showing you here is the Platinum Plus trim level. The Plus means it has the bigger battery pack, which means the range drops to around 259, which is still a very healthy amount, a nice increase versus the 212 that you had in the previous generation. We don't have any kind of 0-60 performance or curb weight figures yet, although I would estimate this new model is probably going to be just over 4,000 pounds based on the weight for the previous generation. But let's go ahead and close up the hood here, because before we start talking about the styling, I want to show you guys this car's unique feature, because remember, the old Leaf was still using a CHAdeMO plug that only accepted up to 50 kilowatts. That was outdated technology. Now, of course, they offer two different plugs, and they're, instead of being on the front of the vehicle, they've moved the J1772 over to the driver's side fender. As you can see, this is going to allow you to basically accept up to 7.2 kilowatts on an AC charger. If you guys want to basically charge this thing at your home, it should take probably 10 to 12 hours. The other interesting twist, however, is if you follow me over to the passenger side, there's a separate plug. This is the first vehicle on the market that actually is offering two different plugs here, so you don't need an adapter. And this is the first Nissan vehicle to introduce plug and charge and the NACS plug. So that's the J3400, which means you have access to Tesla superchargers for this vehicle. And again, it finally gives the Leaf, the new generation, some competitive charging. This will accept up to 150 kilowatts, allowing you to go from 10 to 80% in about 35 minutes. So that's, again, pretty much average, but at the same time, it finally brings the new Leaf up to par with the rest of its competitors. So let's go ahead and talk about the exterior styling, because this model that we're showing you here is the Platinum Plus. It's painted in that Sea Breeze color. This is a new color for 2026, and I have to say, it is absolutely stunning. This car just has a much more expensive, much more sophisticated aura versus the slightly Versa Note hatchback looks of the previous generation. You can see the Platinum Plus has some unique styling touches here. First of all of the Leaf models are going to come with LED headlights. Now, on the Platinum Plus, as you can see, you have a projector style for the LED low and high beam. You have this LED light bar that goes across the front of the vehicle. The Nissan logo is also illuminated, which technically the old Leaf offered that as well, but the old Leaf also came standard with halogen headlights, and you had to go up to the SV Plus to get the LEDs. This is, of course, now standard. You have some active grille shutters down here, along with some integrated parking sensors. The full 360 camera that you see underneath the Nissan logo, the front camera, is actually standard equipment on all models. And of course, you have a version of the company's V-Motion grille, but technically it doesn't actually have any openings. The company is claiming a 0.259 coefficient of drag with this vehicle, which is best in class. It allows, again, this car to have up to that 303 miles of all-electric range. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of the design. The company said they were trying to go with a more crossover look for the vehicle, and I definitely see it. It's definitely taller and wider versus the previous generation. Now, looking at the wheels, the old Leaf had, I believe, a max at a 16-inch wheel or 17-inch wheel. This is the upgraded 19-inch wheel that you get on the Platinum Plus. It's riding on a 235 by 45 R19. These wheels certainly have a very intricate design to them. with the kind of multiple spokes and the gloss black and the machine look. They're also riding on a 20mm wider tire, and this is the reason why this model is rated at 259 miles, as opposed to vehicles with the 18-inch wheels. They rated up to 288 miles. The base S will have a 17-inch steel wheel with a wheel cover. That's going to give you your best 303-mile range. You can see the trim over here kind of has that prerequisite cladding that a lot of SUVs have. They didn't talk about the ground clearance for this vehicle. They also didn't talk about the dimensions, because the current Leaf is a small hatchback with a 103.9-inch wheelbase and around 172-inch overall length. I would estimate this car is definitely longer. In fact, when you look at the profile from this angle, it almost looks like a tall sedan to me. It has that sport back look to it with the sloping tapered roofline, and you also can see that it has the retractable door handles that helps with the aerodynamics. The roof is also black on this particular model. You have integrated turn signals. I believe these mirrors are also power folding with the cameras, of course. You also have a panoramic glass roof that's standard on the Platinum Plus. It actually has a dimmable panel, which will show you guys on the interior. That's something that Nissan essentially took a page out of Porsche's book in the Taycan, for example. And then looking over here, you can see that sloping, tapering rear end here really gives it a sleeker coupe-like profile. But let me know in the comment section below. I personally think the design in photos was a little bit off for me, but in person, it certainly has a much more sophisticated look. Now, following me over to the rear, you can see lots of design changes to talk about because this car is so radically different. First of all, it boldly spells out Nissan at the back. It has this big piece of glass for the rear window, but no actual wiper. Nissan says the aerodynamics require, or basically doesn't require a rear wiper back here. It has kind of like an integrated duckbill spoiler back here. And then you can see the taillights kind of remind me of the new Nissan Z. Now, first of all, this is the Platinum trim, so it has a 3D holographic design for the taillights, and they actually change the light signature depending on what angle you're looking at. And you're also noticing the taillights themselves have an interesting like 2 and 3 LED elements here. And Nissan says that's because the 2 basically means Ni, while the 3 means San. For Nissan, that's of course in Japanese. That's a really cool detail that I really love how they're kind of showcasing even on their more affordable EVs. You can see the rear bumper area has some unpainted areas along with gloss black. Your reverse light's actually down there. You have integrated parking sensors, of course. There's some pretty minimalistic badging back here, which I think also helps to clean up the appearance. And then looking at the cargo area, I wasn't expecting to find this, a power liftgate on this particular trim. And Nissan already had some cargo figures. You're looking at around 20 cubic feet of storage space with the back seats up. If you look underneath here, you can see there's also a little bit of underfloor storage, which this actually has these little panels where you can kind of move them around. And I believe it's kind of like a page out of the Nissan Rogue. The Rogue has something like this where they call it divide and hide. If you want to fold down the seats back here, there's no release levers, but you can basically just pull on that and then push the seat forward. It expands the cargo to around 55 cubic feet of space, which is pretty similar to what you got in the previous generation, although I suspect this is going to be a little bit less because of the tapering roof line back here. But overall, for those of you who are again coming from the previous generation, this is still a very practical vehicle that offers a ton of space that you typically won't find in this segment. Now moving on to the interior of the all-new Nissan Leaf. As you can see, just like the outside where it had a comprehensive redesign, this interior will remind you a lot of other Nissan vehicles like the Ariya, like the new Murano, for example. First of all, this Platinum Plus that I'm showing you here has an upgraded seat material. This is technically their tailor fit. It's a synthetic leather. I also love the color combination with that sea breeze, with this kind of light gray with the dark blue two-tone combination. These seats are heated. However, Nissan does not offer ventilated seats on this car, although it already has perforations in the leather. I'm surprised they don't offer ventilated seats. The driver has a 12-way power seat with a 2-person memory. The passenger sadly only has a 4-way manual seat. And then this trim also has their upgraded 10-speaker Bose stereo, which includes speakers in the actual head restraints, which kind of add to that whole premium ambiance. It certainly is an upgrade considering the last generation Leaf didn't even offer leather. It just came standard with cloth, even on the base or trim. Now getting inside the interior, as you can see, stepping in, it definitely feels like it has that sedan kind of mixed with a crossover height. It's not super high, but it's also easier versus a typical sedan. As I shut the door, it has a really nice solid sounding thunk, so that gives you the impression of quality. Remember, this is riding on a dedicated EV architecture that it shares with the Ariya, and it also gets an independent rear suspension. I forgot to mention that earlier on. Looking at the rest of this cabin, let's talk about the materials. The door panel has this really interesting textured cloth material here, which I actually think looks great. It feels nice, but I worry about the longevity of this. I worry it might get dirty over time. The door panel here is covered in leather. You have these aluminum accented or silver painted door handle trim pieces inches along with your 2-person memory. Only the driver window, however, is one touch up and down. Every other window doesn't have a one touch feature. It's nice and padded over here. There's a little bit of storage down here. Then you can see the steering wheel is basically the same steering wheel from the Aria with that 2-spoke design, the new Nissan logo. It offers a manual tilt and telescoping adjustment where you can get a comfortable driving position pretty easily. This trim also includes a heads-up display, which I was not expecting. And then as you can see, the infotainment system gets a huge upgrade. The old Leaf basically came with a 7-inch display and an 8-inch display here. This is now the upgraded 14.3-inch display. So they're dual 14.3-inch displays. They essentially poached that from Infiniti and of course the flagship Armada. The base version, the S, will come with dual 12.3-inch displays. So you don't necessarily need to get the highest trim to get a really big screen. This of course houses their latest software, which includes Google functionality built in. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And because it has Google built in, this also has route planning. If you guys want to input a destination, it'll tell you where you need to go, how long you need to stop and charge for. And the screen itself really shows that Nissan is taking the Leaf seriously, because electric vehicles tend to be all about technology, and you really get that sense of that from this new version. You can see material quality. This upper portion is hard touch plastic. This area here has the same cloth from the door panels. It's also slightly padded over here and slightly rubberized over here. I also appreciate how you have this kind of feature that was taken from the Aria where you can basically touch that. It's touch sensitive. That's how you turn on your heated seats. You can also do it from the screen. Your climate functions are over here. You have traditional air vents, so no, automatic vents where you have to adjust in the screen, which I really like. If I push that button, you can see the 360 camera is standard. It gives you moving object detection. It gives you trajectory. You can also do the ultra wide view as well. The quality and the resolution for the graphics are also much better versus the previous generation. Your drive mode selector is here. If you start to toggle this, you can go between an eco, standard, or sport, or personal mode. On E-Step is their one pedal drive feature, which we've also had a chance to test out in the new Aria as well. You can see down here in the center console area, the company actually moved their climate functions from down here to like up here, so it freed up some space here. You have some nice storage over here for your cup holders. Here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see this is the current and newer Nissan key, which actually is a really nice evolution of the previous key with your usual buttons here for lock, unlock. You can power open the liftgate and use the panic function. Your wireless charger is here. That's standard if you guys go for the SV trims and up. And then there's a nice padded center console. If you open that up, you can see offers a decent amount of storage, which is good, where you can hide some things. The seats, like I mentioned earlier, tailor fit. They actually feel pretty comfortable and supportive. Just wish they were cooled. And then you can see the glove box here. It goes into the dash. It's actually a pretty big size. It's stamped but not lined with felt. And then above me, you can see this panoramic glass roof. It's a dimmable panoramic roof, and basically, just like a Porsche, if I toggle this, you can see it actually adds different segments where it will frost or defrost the roof panel. Now, this doesn't open up to vent air, but you can see it actually has the Leaf branding there, the Leaf badge there in the actual glass, which is kind of a cool feature. But again, this is kind of unexpected, and it's standard equipment on this car. It's the first car in the class to have a feature like that, so I wasn't expecting that level of technology. So overall, this car definitely has that open and airy feel, good visibility, impressive tech, and I think a lot of people are going to be super surprised, especially if you're coming from the old model. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area. I can show you guys what that space is like real quick. As you can see, the door handle is actually located in the D pillar, which kind of creates more of that coupe-like look. As I get back here, you can see at 5'7", this is pretty much my driving position. I don't have the final legroom figures just yet, but the old Leaf had around 33 inches. This feels maybe a little bit more. I like how the floor is completely flat, which is great for a middle passenger. You have 3 level heated seats on this trim, 2 USB-C charging ports. You have a 12-volt power outlet in this vehicle as well. This vehicle actually does come with a V2L function where you can, go to a campsite, you can power electronics. It actually has a max discharge rate of around 3.45 kilowatts. In terms of the headroom space, you can see the roof does take up space. I have maybe like an inch of clearance, so not a lot. I'm not a very tall person, as you guys know. Thankfully, the material quality back here is pretty much the same as the front. That soft touch cloth, nice and padded here where you'd rest your elbow. So that's a really nice, thoughtful touch. If I fold this down, you can see there's an armrest with 2 cup holders. But overall, the back seat, while it's not the largest, the Aria is going to give you a lot more space. This is still very usable, especially if you guys are, planning to replace your old Leaf. So while the Nissan Leaf may not have the popularity of a vehicle like a Tesla Model 3, you have to admit this car essentially made electric vehicles available to the mass public, because this vehicle was one of the first models that essentially started at under $30,000. The second generation version, even though it was out since 2018, was one of the cheapest EVs that you can buy. So now that we're finally talking about the third generation, Nissan has it in this sea breeze color, and of course the Scarlet Ember over there. This is a car that I think Nissan has needed to redesign for quite some time, because there's a lot lot of changes to talk about here. Over 300 miles of range, a little bit more power is nice. I am a little sad that they didn't offer this vehicle with all-wheel drive. I think all-wheel drive would have been a nice addition, but again, the company will happily sell you an Aria if you guys want that. Now, if you guys are looking to get your hands on the all-new Nissan Leaf, it's going to cost you a little bit more most likely, but they weren't ready to talk about pricing just yet. They said availability will be sometime in the fall of 2025, so you'll have to wait a few more months, but like, we can go ahead and try to speculate because the current Leaf starts at around $28,000 for the base version. That's for the smaller 40 kilowatt hour battery pack. I would estimate this car is probably going to come in at just under $30,000. That's my estimation based on the fact that the Aria starts at around 39 grand. If you're going to talk about this fully loaded Platinum Plus trim level, I'd probably estimate maybe around 40,000 for this model, which would kind of put it right at the base price of an Aria, which is still a really good deal. Remember, this particular segment of vehicle has been exploding over the years as people essentially want to get into an EV, but they don't want to also spend, the kind of money that, people are spending for some of those more fancier EVs. But overall, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of the new Leaf. For Redline Reviews here in West Hollywood, California at this Nissan event, I'm Sophion Bay.